guys, and welcome back to Prayer and Penguins. Today I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to be tracking my reading for 2024. And honestly, the short answer here is excessively. I am fully aware that my tracking system is excessive, unnecessary, and probably slightly obnoxious. But to be honest, I don't really know which one I love more, reading or tracking my reading. These are both things that I enjoy. I know some people find this part of reading to be a bit of a chore, but for me, I really love creating these systems, maintaining these systems, adding the books that I've read, and kind of seeing all the data and the stats that come out at the end, or how it visually looks too. This is something that I find fun. This is fun for me. And I want to share some of that joy with you as I talk you through the different ways that I like to track my reading. I will try and remember to add chapters and timestamps and things down in the description if you're looking for certain things in particular or certain ideas. Or if not, just grab a cuppa and let's explore all of these different tracking systems together. So we're going to start off with Goodreads and The Storygraph, which are the two online platforms that I use to track my reading. I will link my profiles for both of these down in the description below if you'd like to connect. And your main question might be, why on earth would you use both? Why not just pick one of them and stick in that lane? Firstly, as we've already mentioned, excessive. I like tracking things and I can't quite decide which one I like best, so I keep both. But I do use them slightly differently. So Goodreads for me is somewhere that I use to connect with other people, see what other people are reading, get ideas, and find new books a lot of the time. Versus The Storygraph is something that I use less for connecting with other people, just because there are less people on there at the moment and it's sometimes harder to find other people that you know. But I do really love it for its statistics and its graphs and its challenges, reading challenges, and all of those kind of things. In both of these platforms, I just use them to track my reading. I don't kind of track my progress through each book, how many pages I've read, that kind of thing. I just track when I've finished a book. I add the book in, log it, rate it, sometimes write a written review, add it to some reading challenges, and that's about it. It's just there for my information, for my tracking purposes, and for a bit of fun and statistics at the end of the year. So next we come on to my bullet journal. This is a bullet journal that I use. I do have a whole video up on my channel talking you through my whole 2024 setup, but today I'm just going to show you how I use the reading trackers and reading spreads in this journal. But I do this because I love to have a physical record of the books that I've read, as well as kind of all the digital bits and pieces too. I am considering having a completely separate reading journal at some point where I can kind of write reviews, track some different things, add in some different spreads and all that kind of thing to make it a bit more kind of reading dedicated. But again, is that excessive? Definitely. But could it be fun? Yes. But for now, these bullet journal spreads that I have really help me to visualise my reading, kind of see it in some different ways and think about it slightly differently. So I'm going to show you how I add a new book that I've read to this journal once I finished a book. So the main spread that I add it to is my reading tracker. So here I write down the book title and the author's name and then a star rating. And it's just that simple, just a big list of all the books that I've read and their ratings. Just to note here, I always round down my reading stars, so for my ratings. So this was actually a 2.5 and that was a 3.5, but they're rounded down to a 2 and a 3. Just like they are on Goodreads, this just makes it look tidier in my book. Then I will add the book to my Around the World tracker. So this is a very simple graph where I just add a dot for where the author is from, as well as where the book is set. And this is just split by continent, basically. Then we come to my book stats page and I add a dot depending on what the format of the book was that I read, as well as what genre it was. And then I also add a dot if it was translated, if it was 5 stars or 4.5 stars, and if it was a novella, collection of short stories, or a non-fiction book. And these are just some stats that I'm interested in tracking this year, and I think this will help me to really see it very visually rather than thinking about it in numbers or percentages, just to see it as dots on a page. Then we come to my Books and Bibles reading challenge. This is the reading challenge that I created for 2024. If you want to find out more about the challenge, I will link the announcement video down in the description where you can find all of the prompts and all of that kind of thing. But this is just a spread that I have set up in order to track the books that I've read for this, as well as the Bible reading that I need to do for it. So if I was to finish a book that was part of this challenge, I would just add it in to the corresponding blob shape. We also, on the next page, have my 30 before 30 reading challenge. This is 30 books I want to read before I turn 30. I am turning 26 later this month, so I still have quite a few years to get to these books. But very simply, if I was to read one of these books, I would just tick it off on the list and leave it as that. Now, another couple of spreads that are not specifically reading related but are relevant are my goal spreads and my 24/24s in 2024 spread. So on my 24/24s in 2024 spread, that is really a mouthful, but on this spread I just add a dot against books. So this is me just tracking purely the number of books that I have read. And then on my goals spread, I would also add in books here if they were either Christian books or translated books, because those are two goals I'm specifically tracking and aiming to reach a certain number of books in those categories. So it is reasonably straightforward filling in my bullet journal. I try not to make this too much of a time-consuming or really detailed process that is going to take a lot of energy or time. I want this to be simple, I want this to be fun. Again, I am considering whether I want to start kind of writing written reviews a bit more, either in a journal or online, or kind of what that looks like. But at the moment, I try and keep it reasonably simple in terms of my bullet journal, but in a way that's still kind of satisfying, and I get to kind of tick things off and add little dots and add things, but without it taking ages. Next, we go back to the laptop for my reading spreadsheet, and this is my main way of tracking my reading. This is where I have all of the information, all of the statistics, and this one is definitely excessive. But again, now that it's set up, it is fairly easy for me to add books in and just kind of do that as I go along. This spreadsheet is a combination of a spreadsheet that I created, as well as the core pile spreadsheet that was created by G from Book Roast. I've also kind of added and changed some things and drawn inspiration from other booktubers who talk about their spreadsheets online, particularly Ali from Hardback Hoarder and Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy, and I'm sure lots of others that I've kind of watched their videos and taken little bits of inspiration from here and there. I have also just added bits, changed bits, adapted it to work for me over the last few years as I've used a spreadsheet like this. So if we have a look at the different sheets that I have in my reading spreadsheet, we start with this books read spreadsheet, which is the simple one that is kind of what I started with when I first made this. So we basically just have when I read it, the dates, the title and the author, my rating, the number of pages, the number of hours if it's an audiobook, then the format, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, the genre and any subgenre, the audience, the gender of the author, and then the author's region and country. This is just kind of based on how I break down those statistics in the later spread that you will see. We have the setting, again, region and country, the month that I read it in, whether the author was a person of colour, and whether the book was translated or not. Those are just yes or no questions there. So it's pretty simple information in this bit. And then this spread I used to create my monthly stats. This isn't something I look at a whole lot. It's just kind of useful to be able to see how many books did I read in each month and see it in that way if I'm interested. But something I have added this year that I haven't had before is my quarterly stats. So I think this will be much more helpful and interesting for me, because my plan this year is to do kind of quarterly reading updates and quarterly reading reviews, kind of a wrap-up style video on this channel every quarter. So this will give me the stats that I need for that. I might add in some kind of pie charts and graphs and stuff to make this look even better at some point. But for now, it's basically just a table with all of that information. Then we come on to my yearly stats. So this is all of my stats for the whole of 2024. Similarly to the monthly and the quarterly stats, I have genres, format, fiction versus non-fiction, author gender, audience, and then the author region and setting region. I also have a breakdown of the different ratings that I've given books, so I can see kind of how many 5 stars I've had, for example. We also have a breakdown of kind of the percentage of authors that have been authors of colour and the percentage of books that have been translated fiction, as well as my progress towards my reading goal, which is just a bar that fills up as I complete that goal. We also have a breakdown of how many books I've acquired in the year, so I can see how many books I've got and where I've got them from. Then if we scroll down, I've also got a favourite read and least favourite read for each month, just kind of for interest and to see which were my favourite books each month, as well as a reading planner section, so I can just kind of plan out which books I'm going to go to next, so that I don't then like forget when I finish a book and just pick another one up randomly. I like to have a plan sometimes. And then I have a section for books I want to read in a certain month. So these ones that I've got in here are both books that I have reserved from my library or from BorrowBox, and this is the month that I'm going to be getting them. So in my head I'm just planning that that is the month I'm going to be reading those. This spread that we come on to next is the core pile spreadsheet from G, so I've just added this into my spreadsheet. And I've only changed a few things in here, the rest is kind of the original spreadsheet from 2023 because it hasn't been updated for 2024. So we just have title, month, author, publisher. I've added imprint because I wanted to split those out so that it wasn't quite so random on that graph. Format read in, pages read, hours listened, book format, fiction versus non-fiction, genre and subgenre, age category. This one I have added as a new column. This is Did I Cry, which I've split out into No, Watery Eyes, A Little, or Sobbed Like a Baby. Just for my interest, I thought this would be an interesting thing to track, because I always forget by the end of the year which books made me cry and which ones didn't. Then we have publication year and when I acquired the book. So this for me is to see how long books have been staying on my TBR before I then get to them. So that's a column I added. Then we get on to the core pile rating system. I will link all of the people that I have mentioned down in the description so you can see their own spreadsheets and kind of get all of that information directly from them. But this is core pile, the rating system that was created by G, so I will tag that video down in the description for you to see. And that pops out our 5-star ratings as well. There's a box to click if I've DNF'd and my reason for DNF. How I acquired the book. So for me, I've added in some of my own sections here. So we've got My Shelf, Library, Google Books, Audible, an ARC, Libby or BorrowBox, because those are the main places that I get books from. Then here, I think these were originally Book Club and Readathon, and I've changed them to Challenge and Readathon, and I just track whether I've read a book for either of those. So my challenges would be things like my Books and Bibles Reading Challenge or my 24 books in 2024, whereas Readathon would be things like the Buzzwordathon created by Kayla from Books with Lala, or things like the Magical Readathon, again hosted by G from Book Roast. Then we have the dates I started and finished a book, and that calculates how many days it took me to read it, which is very interesting to me. Whether it's the first time I've read it or a reread, whether it's a series or standalone, and then we have tick boxes for new series, continuing a series, or last book in a series, and then whether I'm DNFing that series. We also have the language that I read it in, whether it was a translated book and who the translator was, as well as the original language it was written in. Then we have the representation section, which used to be different to this, but I have changed it to the things that I'm most interested in tracking at the moment. And that for me is mental health representation, disability representation, and then physical health representation. This is just something I'm really interested in seeing what that representation is like in my books, and I think a lot of the time it can be quite absent. Previously I have been tracking this kind of all as one, but it was getting kind of complicated and there would be mental health and something else, and there wasn't really a way for me to track that. So I wanted to split it out and look at it a little bit more closely. So for each representation type, I can put main character, present or absent. Then I can specify exactly what kind of representation it was. For disability rep, I also have a type of disability, so physical, developmental, sensory impairment, or behavioural or emotional disability. And again, this is just so I can look at it in a bit closer detail. I'm just going to see which books have this representation and what books don't. And then we come on to some information about the author, so whether it's a new to me author or one I've read from before, whether the author is a person of colour, and then if yes, there is a space to specify if that is known. I don't like to kind of do too much digging if I need to kind of find this out, but if they publicly share their ethnicity, I might pop that in here. Whether they are a man, a woman, multiple authors or not specified, and then their nationality as well. Then I've also got a tick box for if I have reviewed this, whether it's for NetGalley or just on Goodreads. If I've taken the time to write a written review, I will tick that. And then there's a note section that I don't ever use. Maybe one day I'll think of something that I need to keep in the note section, but so far I just don't kind of keep a note of anything in there. And then all of the data that is in there is pumped out into our next sheet, which is the Reading Stats tab. So this at the moment, because there's only 2 books in my spreadsheet and it's only January, looks a bit boring, but by the end of the year this will look really interesting and colourful and give me a lot of data about all of the books that I've read. This next tab is one of my favourites, and this is my challenges tab. So in here I keep all of my tracking for challenges, readathons, TBRs, anything like that. So first up we have my 30 books to read before 30, and then when I have read this list of books I put in here yes, and then it tracks my progress. Below that we also have my 24 books in 2024, which is the same kind of setup. The book, the author, and then whether I've read it or not. Next up we have my Books and Bibles reading challenge. So it has the name of the person we're looking at in the Bible, the prompt, and then what book I'm going to use. So once I've read a book for that prompt, I'll fill it in here and it will track my progress. For these ones I also keep a list of ideas down below based on each of the different prompts. If there's a few books that I'm thinking of reading for that prompt, I'll add them down below. Then we have the same kind of setup for Buzzwordathon, which is the readathon I mentioned before, and this has the month and the prompt for that month, and then a space for what book I read for that prompt. And again, a list of ideas as I'm kind of deciding what book might fit for each prompt. Then over here we have my Penguins Choose My TBR list, so I'll add in each season down here and track how I'm doing. As you can see, I'm not doing that great so far with my winter TBR, but we still have some of January and all of February to go before that needs to be finished, so we still have time. And then on this sheet I will also add in over here, if I'm taking part in any readathons, I'll add in the TBRs for those and tick them off just in the same way. This next tab is for the books that I have acquired from different places, whether they're given to me as a gift, whether I've bought them. I like to track how many books I've acquired and how much money I've spent on them. So we just track the month, the book, the author, the genre, the author region, the format, where I acquired it from, the price that I spent on it, so this is actually what money has left me and been given to someone else. So in this case, for Google Books, I've used credits for all of these from doing surveys and that kind of thing. So I haven't actually spent any money, but I have got the book, and then I tick them off when I've read that book. And it will tell me at the end of the year how many books have I acquired and how much money have I spent on those books. Next we have my TBR shelf, and this has all of my unread books that I own on it, ebooks, audiobooks and physical books as well. So we just have the title, author, genre, fiction or non-fiction, the country and region of the author, the country and region of the setting, the format, where I can find it, the number of pages, whether the author is POC or not, and how old that book is, when I first got that book in my possession. I've also got a column for any kind of notes and themes, as well as any challenges I'm planning to read that book for, which I haven't really filled in yet for this year, so I need to add in that column. This next tab is my want to read tab. So these are books that I want to read that I've got my eye on, but I don't own my own copy. I don't have the audiobook, ebook, or a physical copy. So I have started this completely fresh this year, so these are purely books that I have added on and been aware of since the beginning of 2024. I wanted to start again just because this list was getting really big and there were books on there that I just couldn't actually remember why I was interested in reading them, so I figured I'd just start again and add things straight into here. So again, it's exactly the same as the previous sheet in terms of what we track, but then I also have a priority rating, so just A, B or C, as to how quickly I want to get to them, what their priority is. And then whether they are available on Google Books, Libby, BorrowBox, Audible, from my library, or whether they are on my wish list as a book that I really want to get a physical copy of. And I can just add in the information there so I know whether to look out for these in my library, for example. This next spread is my series tracker. And this one is again pulled from G's core pile spreadsheet. I don't think there's anything that I've changed on here, so this is exactly the same as her version. It just has the series name, the author, and then I can tick off which books in the series I've read and how many books that are available. I use this kind of colour here, kind of shaded out, to say if a book is definitely coming but it hasn't actually been released yet. Then I also tick if I'm DNFing a series and then when I have finished a series as well. This next spread is my favourite authors spread, so this is just a way for me to track some of the authors that I am really enjoying books from and then see how those books do. And then for me, I count an author as a favourite author if I get 3 5-stars from them. So this is just a way for me to track that, to see if an author kind of, you know, like officially reaches that. That's nothing like formal or serious or anything, it's just a bit of fun and a way for me to track how many 5-stars a certain author has got. And then this final sheet is just a very simple Christian TBR for all of the Christian books that I either own or want to own or looking out for, just so that I can make sure I am coming back to this TBR, remembering these books are actually on my TBR, looking out for these books and reading them, making sure I do prioritise them. That is one of my goals for 2024, is to read 12 Christian books. So this is going to help me kind of track those. So that is how I am planning to track my reading for 2024. Again, I know this is totally excessive. You do not need to do all or any of this with your reading. You can just read for fun and not track it, and that is absolutely fine. But I mean, if you got this far in the video, you probably do enjoy this kind of tracking and that kind of thing. So if you enjoy this kind of stuff as much as I do, firstly, let me know down in the comments, because we should be friends. But also, I hope this gave you some ideas for how maybe you could track your reading and things that you might want to track in different ways. If you do track your reading, I'd love to hear down in the comments how you track your reading and what things you like to track. But we really hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to see more videos from me and Arnold. And if you'd like to see the kind of stats that our tracking helps us to find, as well as our favourite books of 2023, do check out this video right here. And we will see you very soon for a new video. Bye!